This is a sharp sign. This is a flat sign. And this is a natural sign. A sharp, flat, and natural sign are all part of a group of symbols called accidentals. Accidentals placed in front of a note mean that that note is being changed in some way. A sharp raises a note by a half step. A flat lowers a note by a half step. And a natural sign returns a note to its original pitch. Here's a note. That note is G. If we put a sharp sign in front of that note, we get a new note called G sharp. G and G sharp are two different notes. G sharp is one half step higher than G because a sharp raises a note by one half step. Here's another G. If we put a flat in front of that G, we get another new note called G flat. G and G flat are two different notes. G flat is one half step lower than G because a flat lowers a note by one half step. Okay, now let's look at the natural sign. In order to understand what a natural sign does, we first need to learn about an important rule called the one measure rule. This rule says that an accidental on a note is going to last the entire measure. Here's how it works. In this bar of music, we have 4 notes. They are all G. If we put a sharp in front of the first G, well, that note becomes a G sharp. And because of the one measure rule, all of the G's remaining in that measure also become G sharp. Because an accidental on a note lasts the entire measure. Here we have 2 measures of G. We already know that if we put a sharp in front of the first G, that will affect the remaining G's in that bar. So all of the G's in the first bar are G sharp. However, once we cross the bar line and enter the second measure, that sharp is now canceled out and all of those G's go back to being just regular G. But what if we want a note to go back to its original form within the same measure? Well, that's where a natural sign comes into play. Remember, a natural sign returns a note to its original pitch. In this example, the first note would be G, the next note, G sharp, and then the next 2 notes would also be G sharp because of the one measure rule. But what if we wanted that last note to be a G and not a G sharp? Well, that's where a natural sign comes in. Now these notes would read as G, G sharp, another G sharp, and then G natural. The natural sign on the last G cancels the sharp that came previously in the bar and returns that note back to its original pitch, just regular G. There are 2 special circumstances that we need to look at. The first is that accidentals only apply to the one octave that they are placed in front of. In this example, we have 4 notes. They are all G. However, they are written in 2 different octaves. If we put a sharp on the first G, it will affect that note and the only other G that is written in the same octave. The G's that are written an octave above won't be affected by that accidental. If we wanted to change those notes to be G sharps, we would have to place a sharp in front of the first G in that octave, which would carry over to the next G in that octave. The second circumstance that we need to look at has to do with ties, specifically notes that are tied across the bar line. In this example, once again, surprise, surprise, we have all G's. The half note at the end of the first measure is tied to the first quarter note in the second measure. And because they're tied together, we treat those as one note. Because we treat these as one note, any accidental placed in front of the first note in the tie will affect both, even if it crosses the bar line. So, a G sharp placed in front of the half note will last for the half note and the quarter note of the first bar. However, once that note has been completed, the other G's will go back to their original form. If you can remember the one measure rule, that accidentals only apply to the one octave that they're drawn next to, and that accidentals carry over the tie, you'll be able to read music like this in no time. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.